This episode of the Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you by our proud sponsors, Thrive Fantasy, Built Bar, and ExpressVPN. Now, using promo code DTSN, our listeners can get $20 bonus cash on a deposit of at least $20 on Thrive Fantasy, 10% off their Built Bar protein bar order, and 35% off their ExpressVPN annual subscription. Once again, all you have to do is use the promo code DTSN and tell them the Downtown Rams podcast sent you. Now enjoy the show.
Aaron Donald creates the fumble. Goff goes crashing into the end zone.
It is intercepted by Jalen Ramsey.
Robert Wood, touchdown. Picked off by John Johnson. Touchdown, Tyler Higbee. Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air. Henderson with a good run and a first down. Still on his feet. Touchdown, Van Jefferson. Everett in stride. Wow! LA will play for the Lombardi.
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. It's episode 338. I'm your host, Jake Ellenbogen. Unfortunately, unable to join me because technology sucks. Alexis Craft. I'm not too happy about it. Neither is Alexis. We recorded the podcast and basically we lost everything because the internet connection just sucks and just technology sucks and things just suck. So we won't get too much into all of that, but without Alexis, she'll be posting a video of her thoughts on Twitter. If you really want to check that out, you can at the Alexis Craft on Twitter. But as we get into this, before we get into the Rams Seahawks preview point of this show, we're going to touch a little bit on the Cardinals 49ers game. The reason for that, the significance of that, is the fact of the matter is that at the end of the day, the Cardinals had an opportunity to put the Rams in the playoffs, and they did not do that. All they had to do was win. And obviously, you don't want to put your rival in the playoffs, right? Except for the fact that, you had to win the game, and they didn't do it. The 49ers, C.J. Beathard, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, threw all over Arizona. Jeffrey Wilson ran all over Arizona, 183 yards on 22 carries. In case you don't know what that is, that's 8.3 yards per carry. So he pretty much had his way with the Arizona defense. George Kittle, welcome back, had 92 yards receiving. Fred Warner and Tavarius Moore combined had 25 tackles. They just pretty much dominated Arizona. Kyler Murray is starting to really feel the effects, the pressure. This is an 8-7 ball club now. They're 4-4 at home, and they have a game against the Rams. And it's a tough one. They're gonna have to go to LA, and they're gonna have to beat the Rams in their home if they want to make the playoffs. They're gonna have to do scoreboard watching on Sunday, which is tomorrow. With Chicago and Jacksonville. So now, instead of winning this game, going 9-6 and having an opportunity to knock the Rams out of the playoffs, this is an 8-7 team, and now they may not get another crack at the Rams regardless of Week 17. In the playoffs, they may not see the Rams because they may not make the playoffs. The Bears right now would be the favorite, as crazy as that sounds. The 49ers are now 6-9, 5-3 on the road for this season. What can you say about the job Kyle Shanahan has done with that team and how beat up that team is? But I just had to tell you guys because this is a huge game. If the Cardinals win, the Rams, we're talking about a playoff team already. They've clinched a playoff spot, but that's not the case. And on we move to the Rams and Seahawks game. And very interesting here, first and foremost, the Rams and Seahawks already played earlier in the year. 23-16 was the score for the Rams in LA. This game is a little different. Seattle is 6-1 at home. The Rams are 4-3 on the road. The Rams are coming off a brutal loss to the Jets at home. Gave up the Jets' first win of the year. Seattle has won 4 of the last 5. But they've also been in some close games. You look at Arizona, 28-21 effort there. 23-17 Philly. That game was obviously close. The Giants game, they lost 17-12. That was in Seattle. The Jets game, also in Seattle, 40-3 was the score. So that wasn't very close, but all the other ones have been. And they went to Washington, and they escaped with a 20-15 win over the Washington football team. For the Rams, the last 5 games, they lost 23-20 against the Jets at home. They beat the Patriots 24-3 at home. They went on the road and beat Arizona 38-28. They lost at home to the Niners 23-20, and they went to Tampa Bay and beat Tampa Bay 27-24. So the Rams have won 3 of their last 5. The Seahawks have won 4 of their last 5. By the numbers, the Rams, they average 24.6 points per game. Seattle averages 29.5. The Rams are only allowing 19.2 points per game for their defense, whereas Seattle is allowing 24.2. Total yards, this is a pretty neck and neck stat line here. The Rams are averaging 393.4 yards per game. Seattle's averaging 399.6. The Rams passing attack they're averaging 265.6 passing yards per game, whereas Seattle's averaging 274.2. And the Rams actually are averaging more on the ground, 127.9 rushing yards to Seattle's 125.4 yards allowed. The Rams are averaging 307.2, whereas Seattle is averaging over 400 yards given up to opposing offenses. So, that is that. Very interesting stuff there. This looks like a neck-and-neck affair, except also what it looks like is that Seattle's defense is nowhere near the Rams' defense. But lately, I don't know if that is the case. I'm not saying Seattle's defense is better than the Rams, but what I am saying is that the Seattle defense has improved, and they all of a sudden are not as bad as they were earlier in the year, and I would wager that they're better than their offense. Right now, their offense does not look that impressive. Aside from the Jets game where they scored 40, you've seen 20, you've seen 12, you've seen 23, and you've seen 28. And those have been the last 5 games. Now, really interesting thing here is you take away the Jets game, and the Rams actually have scored more points in a game over the last 5 games than Seattle did against Arizona. So this is a huge game. This could ultimately decide who wears the crown at the end of the season, or at the end of the regular season for the NFC West Championship. And now, here's the thing. The Rams beat them earlier in the year, but this is in Seattle. Seattle won last week, and because the Rams lost to the Jets, they lost that mulligan. That was a mulligan that was kind of built in, like you lose to Seattle and you can still somehow, you can make it. You can make something happen. Now they made this game a must-win. And it was brutal to lose to the Jets, but they also may have needed that kind of kick in the butt to get themselves going. Look, this offense has been trying to find an identity all year. They refuse to do what works, run the football, establish the run, build on that, and then run play action passing attack. They have refused to stick to what their brand and what their style ultimately is of playing a football game, and that has been their downfall. Their defense is probably the best in the NFL. So eventually the offense has to pick up they have to pick up the slack, and they simply didn't do that against the Jets, and that's how they lost. Looking at this, the Seahawks are 1-point favorites at home. So this is obviously a game that Vegas is while Seattle's a 1-point favorite at home, that's kind of leaning more towards the Rams. Now, the thing with this is when you look at the Rams, when they're playing at their best versus Seattle playing at their best, the Rams are a better football team. I would say that about almost every single team in the league, maybe even every single team in the league. When the Rams play at their best, they are the best football team in the league. But very often do they not play at their best. As a matter of fact, they really haven't had a full game where they've put together on all three phases, special teams, defense, and offense. They're not going to have Cam Akers in this game due to a high ankle sprain, which is a huge blow to the Rams. So you will see a lot of Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown. I can tell you because we already recorded the podcast and it got erased. It's gone. We'll never get it again. It wasn't saved. I don't know what you want to call it. But basically Alexis was saying throughout our show is that the Rams need to, no matter how good this Seattle defense is, and they're very good against stopping the run, when you look at guys up front and Jerron Reed and L.J. Collier and Rasheem Green and Snacks Harrison, obviously, their newcomer, Carlos Dunlap, who has played a huge role as a pass rusher, and Poona Ford as well. They've done a nice job at stopping the run. They're in the top 5 in that category. So Alexis doesn't care, and neither do I. She's saying straight up the Rams need to pound the rock. They need to do so. They need to make things easier on Jared Goff if they want to win this football game. And I can't say I blame her. That's kind of where I'm at this point. When you look at the way Goff has played this year, 3,718 yards, 20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. I mean, he's got one fewer interception than Wilson, but Russell Wilson has 37 touchdowns to Jared Goff's 20. It's quite simple. If Jared Goff takes care of the football and this defense plays the way it has, I see no reason to think the Rams can't win this football game. I think the Rams can win this football game even making mistakes, because I think both teams are going to turn the ball over. But I think the Rams are going to have success on the ground. People have been really quick to look at the nice new item in Cam Akers and basically push the other old item, the one that was actually playing pretty well, at the beginning of the season, Darrell Henderson. They've already kind of put him up for sale. He's now on clearance rack. But here's the thing. When you put a guy on the clearance rack on your football team and you disregard him, he's a football player. And he's somebody that has had success in this league this year. And I'll be the first one to say I would not be shocked if Darrell Henderson has himself a breakout game. Look, he has been chomping at the bit to get in there. It's been the Cam Akers show since he really showed out against the Patriots. And to be honest with you, Darrell Henderson isn't that much less than what Cam Akers is. I think that's the thing that we need to realize. While Cam Akers might be the better back because of the way he's built, I won't say he's a much better back than Darrell Henderson, and that's not a knock on Cam Akers. It's more of a basically just giving Darrell Henderson credit. And then when you have Malcolm Brown, you have a really nice three-headed backfield, but see, those two guys haven't really been able to get going lately because it's been all Akers. So Akers is out. You're going to see Malcolm Brown and you're going to see Darrell Henderson. And I think that's going to be the key to this game. The Rams are going to have to pound the rock like Alexis is saying or was saying, which you didn't hear, which you'll probably see on her video she posted to Twitter. And I agree. They're going to have to pound the rock. They're going to have to set things up for Jared Goff, get him going, but make it easy on him. Design bootlegs, things along that nature. If you're saying, why am I babying Goff? Or if you're thinking, wow, why do we have to do all this? Well, that's the quarterback you paid all that money to. So if you're concerned by that, that's why people have been very critical of Jared Goff, because he's somebody that gets paid a lot of money to be the franchise quarterback. And every week we're talking about this is how we can make things easier on Goff, and this is how we can kind of baby Goff. So yeah, that I do have an issue with that. But regardless, Jared Goff takes care of the football in this one. They pound the rock. They set up play action. They throw down the field, short and intermediate game to Cooks, not Cooks. Woods, Kupp, Reynolds, Jefferson, say even Malcolm Brown, Darrell Henderson, Tyler Higbee, Gerald Everett. There's plenty of weapons, so there's no excuse in this one. And there's no excuse really in anyone. Goff has the weapons. Protect him better than you did against the Jets. I will say, as dominant as somebody like a Jarran Reed has been in the past, Jarran Reed is not Quinnen Williams. So I do think the Jets just had a better matchup. I do think the Rams, who have experience, aren't going to get quite stifled the way that they were with Quinnen Williams in the game. Plus, this team has experience against this other team, and plus, both these teams being rivals, you always have to imagine these games are going to be close. So I wouldn't rule out either team at this point. But the key is to really protect Jared Goff, and not just protect him on an offensive line standpoint, but protect him in the passing game. As a play caller, Sean McVay needs to make sure he is balancing this attack, but mainly putting a focus on the running game. Once the running game works, it opens up the passing game. That is your brand of football. As far as on the defensive side, you just have to do what you did against the Seattle Seahawks earlier in the year in LA. It's very simple. Allow Russell Wilson. He can get out and move. That's fine. But you have to contain him. You can't let him run for chunk plays and run right up the middle and, gain those third and longs like you allowed Sam Darnold to do last week. You just can't do that. So, they have to, in my opinion, you go back to what works. You used Darius Williams. You used him on Tyler Lockett. Held Tyler Lockett to under 70 yards receiving in that game. I call that a win. And you used Jalen Ramsey, and you had him shadow DK Metcalf the whole game. I also thought that was the best course of action. You got to hope that somebody like Aaron Donald can break through. Leonard Floyd's been a little quiet in the pass rush game over the last couple weeks. So I'd expect him to get something going. Plus, his sacks come in bunches, so if he gets a sack, I'd expect 2, 3. He can really get going. He's a streaky player. But, the best thing about this game for the Rams is that they control their destiny. I understand they're playing it on the road. I understand they're playing a tough opponent. But I'll be honest with you. It's a lot better to control your destiny than need a bunch of teams to lose. Like say the Dolphins need, or like the Ravens. It's not going to be easy in the AFC. And the NFC, after the Niners beat the Cardinals, it's starting to get really narrowed down to the point where it's really just a battle between the Seahawks, who I believe they've already clinched a spot in the playoffs. So they actually wouldn't even be between them. That's the weird thing about this whole thing, is that while the Seahawks already clinched the playoffs, they didn't clinch the division. And the Rams didn't even clinch a playoff spot, but they still can win the division. So, very interesting here. It really is coming down to the Rams, the Cardinals, the Bears, and then you have the Giants, the Eagles, the Cowboys, and Washington football team that are all in it. Now, the NFC East, none of them can win a wild card spot. So it's whoever wins that gets the automatic bid into the playoffs, whoever wins the division. But so it's really between the Rams, the Cardinals, and the Bears. The Rams beat both of them head-to-head, but the reason they didn't clinch is because the Rams could still finish 9-7. The Cardinals could still finish 9-7. If the Bears went out, they finished 9-7. And by virtue of a three-way tiebreaker, head-to-head goes out the window. So forget the fact that the Rams beat the Bears and beat the Cardinals once. It would go to the Cardinals or the Bears over the Rams. And the reason for that is because the Rams do not have the same record in common games. The Rams have a better conference record than the Cardinals. And you can honestly point to the holes in the tie-breaking scenario, in my opinion. The fact the Rams would essentially lose a tiebreaker scenario to the Bears and the Cardinals. If the Cardinals go 7-5 in the conference, they beat the Rams, and the Rams go 8-4, it would go to the Cardinals because the Cardinals beat the Niners and the Rams lost the Niners twice. So, look, I'm not trying to say here, I'm not trying to make a whole big thing about how it's not fair. I don't care if it's fair or not. At the end of the day, that's what we're looking at, and why that game was so important for the Cardinals to win, because therefore, by them winning at 10-6, the Rams no longer could tie with 3 teams. They could only tie with the Cardinals, which would be a head-to-head tiebreaker, because the Cardinals are keeping the Bears alive by losing, because now the Cardinals are 8-7. The Bears can win against Jacksonville, go 8-7, and then the Cardinals beat the Rams, and say the Rams lose to the Seahawks, they go 9-7, Cardinals go 9-7, and then the Bears beat the Packers, and they go 9-7. It's not extremely likely scenario. It was about 11% chance of happening before the Cardinals lost, but now I'd imagine it's a little bit more increased due to the Cardinals losing. But I'm not 100% certain something like that would happen. To be honest with you folks, if the Rams were to lose 3 straight, because that's what it would mean. If the Rams lost to the Jets, which they've already done, to the Seahawks, and then to the Cardinals, and then had to have all these teams, they had to have the Bears and the Cardinals lose, I hate to break it to you, but I don't think the Rams would be deserving of making it. I mean, they would basically need the Bears to lose 2 games or 1 game. I don't know. Just to me, I think that's ridiculous. There's no excuse to lose 3 straight. I don't see them doing that. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit, but I'm not really worried about that. As far as this game, though, with the Rams and Seahawks, the Seahawks, if they want to win this game, it's very simple. They have to, first off, they have to test this defense. And they have to do things that they may not do a ton of, but they have to get guys out in space. They have to break up the DK Metcalf, Jalen Ramsey coverage. And here's how you do it. You run some rub routes, right? You cause traffic. You create traffic in the middle of the field. You get somebody like DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett on a post or a quick slant, and you get them going. And once they get into space, obviously both of them have incredible speed. I think both of them ran a 4.3. And that is how you can start to pick apart the Rams. Then you have the running game. Now, the Rams have done well against the run, but they have been susceptible to giving up, chunk plays. And in that sense, you could use Carson, you could use Rashad Penny, and you could use Carlos Hyde, assuming he plays. So, they have options there. And then Russell Wilson, obviously, once that all opens up, now Russell Wilson is kind of free to do whatever he wants. And even if they try to contain him and he gets out, I mean, you can find a guy that's open if you keep your play, alive long enough. So I think that's how Seattle has to attack the Rams on offense if they want to win this football game. On the defense, again, it's very simple. You have to attack Jared Goff. That has to be the main play. If Jared Goff gets uncomfortable, Jared Goff is going to fall off a cliff. Jared Goff is going to turn into a roller coaster. That is what Jared Goff is. When he has pressure, he doesn't do all that well against it when you start hitting him in the mouth. So Seattle, if you want to win this football game, obviously you're going to need some pass rush, Benson Mayo on the outside, as well as Carlos Dunlap. Interior pass rush up the middle. We saw what Quinnen Williams did in the Jets game and how big he was in getting pressure on Goff. Franklin Myers had a sack in that one as well. So the interior pass rush needs to be there. I think guys like Poona Ford and obviously Jaron Reed and LJ Collier can be issues for this interior offensive line if they don't improve upon last week's performance. So that's how you're going to have to do that. Plus, I will say this. Seattle has 2 Pro Bowl safeties. Whether you believe Quandre Diggs is a Pro Bowl safety or not does not matter. They have 2 Pro Bowl safeties by virtue. And so, in my opinion, Jamal Adams is best when you use him everywhere. And so Jamal Adams, I would blitz him. I would, cause havoc on Jared Goff and create turnovers. That's how I would use that. And that's how I believe they intend to attack Jared Goff in this one. As far as the Rams to win this football game, they're going to have to pound the rock. It's that simple. They're going to have to make things easy on Jared Goff, like I've already said. And then on the defensive side, they're really just going to have to play their style of football. They're going to have to play their brand of football. They're going to have to do exactly what they did in the first Seattle game. So that is that in regards to how these teams can win. We've previewed. Now let's get into stat predictions, score predictions, and then let's call this a podcast. So the stat prediction, I will say, is that Jared Goff has less than 220 passing yards in this game, and I think I'll combine that with the Rams have over 35 carries in this one. I think the Rams are really going to not only listen to this show, I kid, but the Rams are going to pound the rock. They're going to. They're going to use Darrell Henderson. They're going to use Malcolm Brown. And since Cam Akers is out, I would imagine if they want, they could go Xavier Jones or Raymond Calais in the backfield. And I honestly think that's what they should do. Because I think Calais' speed is an extra dimension there that they don't have right now. And Xavier Jones, I call him X-Man from SMU, runs with great balance. This is somebody that I think could come in and run for 100 yards in a game if need be. I think he is talented. It's just he hasn't gotten the reps, and he's been more of a special teams guy. But if they wanted to go that route, they absolutely could. I also think Darrell Henderson can be a bell cow, and I think Malcolm Brown can as well. So the Rams really, I think they'll go over 35 carries. And as far as touchdowns, I'll probably say, Darrell Henderson gets in the end zone and Malcolm Brown gets in the end zone, and I'll give a receiving touchdown to Van Jefferson. Rams are going to win this game. You heard it here first. Rams are going to win this game 24-20 over Seattle. They're going to score one more point more than they did in LA. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be pretty. But at the end of the day, I do think the Rams pull away with the W on the road. All they need is that W, and they clinch a playoff spot at 10-5. And then, of course, if they want to win the division, they need Seattle to either lose to the 49ers or the Rams to beat the Cardinals. Well, they need to beat the Cardinals. So that's how that would happen. But 24-20, Rams win. Jared Goff doesn't have his best game, but it doesn't matter because he is, kind of held in check, but the Rams run the ball well against a tough defense, against the run. But that's going to do it for me. I'm Jake Ellenbogen. You missed Alexis Kraft. It's not your fault. She was not on this show because technology sucks. I won't get into that anymore. But you guys enjoy the game. We'll be back with a recap show, kind of breaking down everything that went down. Hopefully, we're talking about a 10-5 Rams team headed to the playoffs, and not a 9-6 team that needs to win desperately week 17 to make the playoffs. But as always, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. And you guys enjoy the rest of the weekend, and you'll hear us soon.